Hey YouTube, it's Dimitri. Today we're going to talk about breaking tech for the sake of privacy. Let's just dive on in here. So for those of you who've seen The Social Dilemma here, the documentary on Netflix, there are great takeaways from this, things we should be concerned about. There are also things I think that they've kind of hyped and made very documentary, like movie-ish, things that might have been exaggerated somewhat, trying to drive their point home. But data collection on people globally should be a concern. It's being collected, of course, by tech firms, social media, so the social dilemma here. So if you have a cell phone in your pocket, you most likely have Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, LinkedIn, all kinds of things, even email, for example. All this data is being collected on you, whether you really like it or not. The government, depending where you are in the world, all governments of some sorts are collecting data on their citizens. And of course, external countries are also collecting data. So there are companies in China, for example, that run social media apps that many of us use. And when we do so, that information on you is being collected and stored and monitored. And of course, we're modeling with this. So data collection is happening. We know it's happening. Many of us aren't that concerned, but we should be far more concerned than you are, because the future consequences could be far more deadly, far more devastating than what they currently are. The current privacy approach here now, so let's say, I don't want to get tracked as much. There's a lot of companies that do virtual private networks. And I'll make the comment here, free VPN is not a great tool. Free VPNs are selling your data in some way, shape, or form to be able to provide the product for you for free. So paid VPNs are better because you are the customer. That's what they're getting paid for, is to provide you privacy. When you get something for free, as I've mentioned with social media, you are the product. So they are selling your data and your information, most likely. And if they're nonprofit and they're doing a great job at it, eventually they'll have to sell your data or do some sort of thing to generate money, because that's how businesses work, and people don't work for free. But VPN encrypts your internet traffic. Encryption allows someone to see that you've sent data around, but it hopefully prevents people from reading what is inside that, file, that information that's being sent. So I see, Dimitri went to some websites or whatever, but I don't know exactly what he's looking at. I don't know exactly which websites he's going to, but I can see there's traffic coming in and out, or I can see he sent some sort of file, but I don't know what's in the file. Okay, this is basic high level what VPN is. It really tries to hide your IP address so that we can't really connect them as well and see exactly what's going on. So the current method of privacy here is going to be, how do we hide what we're viewing? I'm going to cover the dark web here because I think Tor is quite amazing. I think it's a really interesting concept developed by the Navy. Tor stands for the onion router. This is a 3-layer example. You can imagine this like onions with all the layers, baked in, and each layer is a key that can only be read by that server, and it runs in 2 directions here. So I'll link below hopefully a video that explains this far better than I can ever do it. But realistically here, the inner side is going to be layer 1, the red one here is going to be layer 2, and the green one is going to be layer 3. What ends up happening is you send this onion, let's say we go through Tor, which uses 3 steps or 3 layers here. It sends the information, so say you visit some website or you get some file, it sends it to the first server in a random location, okay? That server has a key to unwrap and unlock the information of the outer layer, so layer 3 in our case, the green layer. Then that information gets sent to a second random server in some other random location, and that has the key to unlock the second layer, the red layer. And then finally it sends it to a third location, which is going to be the blue layer here, and it unlocks the blue layer. And then finally from that server, it sends you to the website you're trying to go to or the information you're accessing here. And then it goes backwards. So when the information is then being passed back to you, so I've requested to view this website, when the information is being passed back, server 1 adds a key or a lock for layer 1. Then it sends it back to a second server, which adds a second key, which is the red layer. Then it adds a third key, which is the green layer. And then finally it gets to me. I have all 3 keys, so I can unlock all the layers and view the information. And the beauty of this network is that the servers can only see what's before and what's after, but it does not know what's along the chain. So it can't see what's at the end. So server 2, for example, can't see the user at the beginning or the information at the end. It can only see traffic it's coming from one server or another one. Now you imagine a massive global network. You're getting pinged around all over the globe. you have, let's say thousands or millions of requests coming into one server in one location, and those magically go out to a bunch of other servers in other locations. It makes it very hard to track, but it's not impossible, but it's hard to track. So this is, again, like a really enhanced, amazing VPN project and process here on how the dark web works, how it hides your identity, for example, right? Because now I don't have data on you. I don't know who you are. I just know there's a bunch of information being passed around, and I can't really figure out who's looking at what. I can't get the information on you I need, so I can't target things to you. So this is what's kind of the current process here of the dark web, quite similar to VPN. Again, I'm not a computer scientist, so please don't quote me on like it's exactly the same. There are many differences in how these things operate. That's why I'll link that video below so you can look at these things in greater depth. But models and data is really what firms are wanting. So we just think about this often as we just tech, right? It's just technology that wants the data. No, the people that really want the data are other users. So governments, companies that are going to do advertising, for example, organizations that are targeting other people for other usages, like perhaps, I don't know, gaining new followers, could be any sort of organization here. We need the data to figure out who is the most acceptable to buy something, to take some sort of action, to do something that we want them to do. So we want to manipulate them in some way, to kind of nudging and encouraging them. And I think it's shocking we don't have more regulation around this, especially if you look back in the olden days where there's like subliminal messaging in advertising and marketing, like on TV, for example, which was banned in the US. Now we're using this, which is far more complicated. Psychologically, I feel like it's far more damaging, causes anxiety and a bunch of other issues as well, as we're on these social networks and social media. But again, we're trying to gather data to target someone. And what they do with this data is we generate models. So I work in a role where I develop models and I validate models, which means I check to see that they're working correctly. Models take in data as input and it predicts something out of it. So there's always going to be some sort of relationship or correlation that I'm seeking to find here. Websites collect data on visitors to build a profile and predict what sort of ads that you'll want. Basically, this can also be used for cyber crimes, for example, so gathering information like login information to access your bank accounts. This can be done to persuade you to vote differently. This can be persuading you to do different actions. The amount of manipulation that can be done with models is quite devastating. And yet I don't think we as the globe, we as the world, even the data science, quant finance, big data communities don't fully grasp this. And I don't think many people quite understand the risks that could be coming, and I see as inevitably coming in some way, shape, or form here. So this is my approach, which I think would actually work better than hiding the information. So VPN and like Tor and stuff are trying to hide the information, trying to make it hard to track people. But I think there needs to be a predatory data approach here. Now you can build models to do this, to break other models. But today we're just going to talk about predatory data instead of predatory models. But again, how you do this, you would need models and scrambling to do the process. But what if instead of hiding our data, we generated a large amount of random data? Okay, so think about that. All models, including machine learning and AI, utilize data and specifically correlations to make these predictions. So imagine now, instead of you being able to see my profile, so let's do an example here. Let's say I have this individual, I'll call him Tom, and this is the profile that's kind of built. We've tracked his information, whether it's his purchases, whether it's his social media accounts. We know that he likes Supercross. We know that he drinks beer. We know he likes sunglasses and he's purchased them, let's say in the last 6 months. He's also an auto mechanic. He plays poker. He likes guns. He loves the Die Hard movie and he watches it on Netflix multiple times, I don't know, a week or something. Maybe he owns the DVD or something and I can track that. And he also likes to go camping. So I have this information about him. I'm gathering some sort of profile. The reality is I don't care who Tom is. I just need to know he is some number in the system that goes through the model. And I know this is what he likes. And I want to make money off of him in an ad sense here. Or if you want to get a little more grim here, let's say I want to persuade him to do something, or I want to persuade him to vote a specific way, or I want to persuade him to join some sort of cult, for example, or you want to persuade him, I don't know, to be happy, cheerful, and make good actions and save more money for retirement. So there's positives with the nudging. Not a fan of any of this. This kind of violates your, I guess, psychological rights, as I would call them. But we have this profile on Tom. Now, let's say we have another guy named Gary. Okay. Gary likes beer, he likes sunglasses, and he's also a mechanic, similar to Tom. But these other pieces here I need to predict. The sports, the hobbies, there's 2 hobbies in here, the movies he likes, and some sort of game that he enjoys playing here, right? Now, again, these can be simple advertising things. I want to sell him more merchandise. So say I'm Amazon. What sports does he like? Is there equipment I can sell him? What hobbies does he have? Is there books I can sell him on the hobbies? Is there different, things that you need for the hobbies? Like if you like to garden, for example, can I sell him a shovel? Can I sell him for camping, as we saw earlier? Can I sell him a tent? Can I sell him a knife? And what movies would he like? And how do I kind of get him to look at other things, right? Maybe I'm going to be the person generating a new movie and I'm trying to target a very specific group here of people. Maybe I have a message for them I want them to buy into. Now I can look at these things like movies, hobbies, games, sports, and figure out how to craft a message that they will really buy into here. Now, this is just a magical diagram. This isn't how a model per se works, but imagine that all these orange circles here are going to be different objects and things, and that the lines are going to be correlations. The thicker the line, the higher the correlation, meaning it is more predictable. The thinner the line, the less the predictability on this. So you can see we have the information on Gary, sunglasses, beer, mechanics. We're often going to even layer these things. So you can imagine simply that, okay, Gary, he's a mechanic and drinks beer. He probably likes Die Hard, the movie, or he likes to camp, right? These are things that are probably highly correlated. I can take a whole bunch of profiles of people like Tom, let's say millions and millions of people similar to Tom. I can look at it and figure out, okay, Gary is also going to like camping. Something easy to do here. But now you can sort of back the threads across. Okay, if they like camping, they also probably need a tent. And if they like a tent, they probably shop on either Amazon or REI. And if they shop at REI, they probably also, might like roller skates or rollerblades. And now when you start looking at the 2 pieces, you say, okay, camping and rollerblading don't seem related at all. But as you follow these kind of correlations through some sort of modeling framework here, you can draw really interesting conclusions that we can use to kind of make people do things, whether it's buying something or making some sort of other action here. We can get to that point where they can make some sort of decision, and I kind of nudge them into doing that based on the data I have on other people. In this example here, I'm just saying from these 3 characteristics, let's say predict woodworking, chess, The Lost City as a movie, and rugby as a sport here, right? I'm able to make these predictions, and often if you go back and you look at things like Tom, if you said, does he like chess? You're thinking maybe, maybe not. But now when I have correlation and I have a ton of people like Tom, and I can do all these interrelated correlations here, I can predict Gary. And often, a lot of these things are not going to be overlapping as you might think. So you might have people in different countries, you might have different genders, you might have different income classes, but there are going to be things that are very similar in hobbies and characteristics that tie all these people together in some complicated web or network here. So that's where these modeling and maximizing correlations comes in. And again, we run these models. When the model doesn't perform well, we figure out what's broken, what's not correlating well, and we go back and we try to maximize correlation, which is really the big core here with data science and machine learning methods in general. A lot of times we don't care about the causality. We're just automating these massive systems and hoping to get some value or some action out of it at the very end. So correlation failure, what if we could create correlations that were purely random here? So when correlations are high, it's highly predictive. When correlations are low, they're not predictive and they're of no value in these models here. Now, if you're able to generate enough random data, so let's say I have my computer, these are the 10 things I consistently look at, and you randomly generate 100,000 other data points, other websites, other information that has nothing to do with me, then I seem very odd and very random and I don't fit into any of these correlations and you can't model me very well. Now, if one person does this, it doesn't really matter. It's not a loss. But if you could get a system or a corporation that could generate all this random data, some sort of software you could add onto your computer, for example, and onto your cell phone, now that IP address, that tag that identifies you is now magically generating hundreds of thousands, even millions of random information. And now when it's ran through these models, there's essentially low correlation, which means nothing. So this creates very, very challenging modeling for tech. It makes it very hard for companies and governments to track people because you're essentially breaking the problem at the very, very beginning. We're not trying to hide the path. We essentially just create a bunch of random paths and no one really knows which path we did or did not go down here. This is going to result, though, for the tech firms and other actions as low audience retention. So people like you to stay on websites, don't need to look at multiple things. They can collect more data, for example. They want a higher probability that you're going to buy something. So audience retention is going to go down. They do not like that. Again, targeting audiences is going to be very challenging. So Tom and Gary seem to be quite similar. As I mentioned, maybe there's someone else, I don't know, who liked roller skating, and somehow they can connect them. If we can break this down so there's no longer an easy way to create segments, we're going to have to go back to the olden days where we're going to look at things, for example, again, hopefully we can figure this out. They're going to try to model this. If you can figure out things like gender, income brackets, age, and things like very, very high level things, that's how old marketing worked, right? You went and you saw like an action movie in the movie theater. The ads in that movie are going to be adult ads, like PG-13 or R-rated ads. They're going to be targeting adults, and that's going to be the demographic because they know the actual product they're already selling here. And again, they'd have to go back to things like kids. So again, kids products, kids TV stations, for example, they market kids products because they know kids are watching the TV station. That's a given. But now if you had more information, like in our current time, you could extract out genders, you could extract out, I don't know, other preferences, other TV shows they perhaps watch, and you could kind of manipulate them to watch or do specific things. Again, children is a vastly concerning topic for me because children are so much more easily kind of controlled, pushed, nudged, manipulated, whereas adults hopefully have grown up a bit and can kind of see through some of the marketing ploys or the fallacies. But unfortunately, as data is exploding, it seems like there's a lot of manipulation on what we do and don't prioritize in countries and political parties solely based on the fact that we kind of hype things up and we do marketing and we target people and we persuade people to run down some sort of path, which we view as now logical because we've only been shown very specific parts of information. Correlations are extremely important for this modeling process. And so we're going to have to go back to the olden days if we can break the tech firms and break the governments and break the people that are trying to model us here. I think this is probably a better approach for those reasons that basically we're starting at step one. And it's going to be extremely hard to figure this out. Now, again, the software, the applications that are generating random data here, it's going to be a model. So you have to have a model to break the models. What this would look like in practice, so using our example we talked about before, say Gary bought some sunglasses, he drinks beer, he's a mechanic. Because of the randomness, what might end up being predicted now by the current models is that he likes to crochet, he likes to play the board game Monopoly, he likes the movie Father Stu, and he likes soccer. Now, we hope that almost none of these are true, or it's just a random guess of one of these could be true because we've essentially broke the correlations. And you can see here in this diagram, the lines have all gotten quite thinner because now there's less and less correlations for these firms to kind of track and build. And even in some cases here, we hope that we break out so there's no longer kind of tracking of different metrics and different things because the models are struggling to really grasp what's going on because there's no more meaningful correlations kind of existing. And then finally, to wrap up this presentation, or why privacy matters, I think we end up with kind of a, well, who cares? And a buddy of mine, a really close friend, asked me many years ago, we were talking about a similar topic, and he says, you know, if you follow the rules and the laws, who cares? Like, why do you care that people track you? Dimitri, I know you. You follow the rules, you follow the laws. I don't know why you care about this. And that really stumped me. And I said, he's right? He is right. We should not care because I follow the rules, I follow the laws. I'm a good citizen. There's nothing to fear. There's nothing to hide. And I think most people don't have a lot of issue with people tracking their data for ads usage, especially younger generations, right? I like getting ads that are relevant to me, but we don't really know where this data is actually going after that or what it's being used for. But what if, you know, the person that got the data had bad intentions? This is the piece, the fallacy that I missed originally when I thought, yeah, he's right. Who cares? But what if the person that had that information on me now no longer had good intentions? So let's pretend social media is an angel and they do everything right, but somehow the data gets stolen or they sell it to a company who then sells it to somebody else. And now they have bad intentions. Potential issues that can arise with this is going to be propaganda generation. And I know people think I'm crazy when I talk about propaganda here. But filtering information creates narratives that can be misleading or untrue here. So often, if you have all the facts out there and I only show you facts on one side of an argument, because the real world. Things are not as cut and dry as black and white. They're not easy to see. There's often pros and cons of doing something, and trying to weigh both sides is challenging. But if I only show you one side, so I only show you the pros of some argument, you're going to be vastly for it. You're not going to listen to anybody else because you've seen so much of this news coming in your news feed, the targeting, the marketing, the driving here. You're going to be basically filtering information to the point that you make poor decisions that you wouldn't normally make because you're being manipulated. Fake news, fake information is being fed to target groups for money and power. So politics is the easiest one to pick off here. Again, you can watch Joe Rogan if you want to go see some other instances of how things are kind of being torn apart and misled. Again, instead of filtering, I might even just tell you fake information or false information. And then what I've noticed a lot with the news is even when these news agencies or even when social media sites try to go back and correct things, I've already created an opinion. I already know this is the truth in my mind here, right? This is what I think is true, even though it's not true, or it's very filtered and you only have a few points of information here. And then I'm hard to change my mind back. So these are things that we should be concerned about. And also we should worry about reduction of free speech, which seems to be a very common topic now with social media going on. And again, the top two I think are valid concerns. How do we combat that? Again, I think free speech is actually the solution. So instead of reducing viewpoints, reducing information, trying to take out the fake information, I think we should really focus on allowing free speech as much as possible, maximizing free speech. People will hopefully see a lot of different viewpoints. There will not be the filtering issue as much. Again, fake information is going to come. That's just how the world works. People like to generate fake information and get publicity. But if there's enough information in general, finding the truth shouldn't be as hard as it's getting today because we are being kind of guided into different paths and directions. And information is so filtered. Often some of the filtered information might even be fake information. And if you can't find other viewpoints, you can't find ideas to bounce off of, other people, other groups, this is a real concern. It should be for society moving forward here. Again, reduction in free speech leads to less thought and less discussion because obviously this is the answer and obviously this is what everyone else is doing, when in reality this might not even be true. The majority might be going a completely different way, but without having that vision, that sight, those discussions, you can't really challenge your thinking. And in many ways, the internet's kind of killing thought. We've stopped thinking. It's far easier for us just to follow what everyone's telling us because obviously everyone else is smart and that is the simple truth. And I read it online, so therefore it's a reality. These sorts of things need to be kind of broken down. And again, increasing free speech is going to be one of those solutions to kind of solving these problems. And again, it's easier to manipulate people with reduction of free speech here. So you might have an idea in your head and you think the consequences are going to be negative for you expressing that. I know I've been in that situation many, many times. I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to risk a promotion. I don't want to risk offending somebody. I don't want to seem like a crazy person, right? So you just don't say anything. And the reality is if you have the mass majority that has an opinion and nobody says anything, over time, you can actually slowly persuade people that they're actually wrong, even though they don't have any evidence or facts to support that. It just seems like that's what the majority is going with. So we easily kind of jump on board here. Other concerns here is discrimination and not what you're thinking probably with traditional discrimination. Terrorism, I think, is a massive concern here. So targeting groups for violent actions and reasons here. Again, political issues, abortion, environmentalism, race, etc. are very, very hot topics. I don't see a lot of actual free speech and discussion going on. There's often like, you're bad, I hate you, you have no idea what you're talking about. And then it does seem like when you go into these social networks and news sources, you're very being targeted to one area. Religion, again, easy target for terrorism and discrimination. These sorts of things are even more concerning because even if I can target very specific people, even if you're a minority group that's an extremist group, it is far easier to get people to join your group because they don't have that freedom of speech. They don't have equal views here. And again, by not allowing or preventing, I guess, in ways, preventing technology from actually, monitoring you, controlling you, and marketing towards you to make a buck, we need to increase that free speech here. We need to kind of break those models by adding more nonsensical data to this to kind of help prevent the tracking of us. And then finally, other things to kind of consider here is going to be hiring. So hiring is often very biased. I hate to say it. It's easy to do that in person, right? You For example, I love when people say, oh, we prevent racism and genderism and ageism and all this because we have this great hiring process. Well, the reality is when I bring you in to interview you in person, what prevents someone from actually discriminating? I can see what you look like. I know these things. Now, hiring gets even worse when you have more information on that person. Maybe then I can figure out your political party. Maybe I can figure out your religion. Maybe I can figure out your thoughts and opinions on, different sorts of areas that aren't related to work. But again, I don't like those sorts of people. So then you kind of create this discriminatory practice here. So more data, more information, especially being held private and sold, is not a good thing to be doing. Again, political targeting. So one of the biggest nonsensical crap I see constantly is the hatred of the rich. There's no questioning, there's no discussion behind why are they rich in the US specifically, right? Do we see a lot of rotation between people that go from lower classes to upper income classes and back and forth? We do. Is the system more balanced? Where do we see kind of the loopholes? Where do we see like monopolies and corruption forming? How do we prevent those? So again, you got to balance these things. There's pros and cons on this. But jumping on target, just saying, I hate all rich people and that's going to be my platform, and then manipulating people based on these kind of narratives is just nonsensical lies. You need to look at the full system, look at the outcomes, look at all the information here. And then, of course, ideological targeting. So economics and politics kind of bake into this as well. And again, information can be faked and used against people. So the conclusion for this is really kind of that thought process. Why do we care? Why should we care? We should care because not everybody has great intentions here. There is a massive need for privacy. I know people don't like to think about this, right? We're in the modern age. It doesn't really matter. It does matter. It does impact how we will live, how we will grow, how things will kind of evolve over the next 10, 20, 30 years here. Hiding information has not been very effective. Again, maybe it's more effective in some areas, but people don't want to pay for VPN. There are ways to kind of get around these systems. They're not foolproof systems. Again, nothing is foolproof. So even building and generating, predatory data, so data that's, just randomly generated per user, it's not a foolproof system either. And then there's little support from government in the form of regulations over tech and data usage. Now, I'm not the biggest proponent of having government involvement in things. More government doesn't solve problems. As we've seen kind of in this presentation, giving government more access to data and all this stuff doesn't result in always good outcomes. So now you think your party's amazing, your party's in power. Imagine the other party becomes in power or a new party comes in power. Are they going to use the data against you? Are they going to help you? What are they going to do with it here? Government regulation needs to be brought in somewhat, though, I think, on the tech side, because a lot of this is being done from tech, and tech, I think, just doesn't really care. So it's somewhat shocking, I know. But there needs to be more ethical modeling. Banking is vastly overregulated in many areas, but I've worked in banking for so long. There are many, many great things that have come out of banking, trying to prevent things like redlining, which is where you discriminate based on the neighborhood you live in, prevention of racism, ageism, these sorts of things that we concerned about when we make loans. Again, it's had positive impacts in many areas. These are things I think that tech needs to consider as well. So anyways, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And as always, until next time.